Alright, here we go. We got a misfiring 4-cylinder Camry. You can see the roughness. Misfiring. We got a couple symptoms. Check engine lights on. Couple of codes. The common one is the p0300. This one has, I believe, a 303, and it's got an interesting one. p0351 for ignition coil A, primary or secondary circuit. So we're going to do some troubleshooting, do a spark test. So again, we're going to start off with some basic tests. You can see it's still definitely shaking a lot. For sure it's misfiring right now. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to disconnect the coil of cylinder number 1, do what's called a power balance test. So you can notice a difference right away. Drastically running worse. RPM's dropped a lot. Plug it back in. Going to go ahead, get number 2. Again, we got some difference there. Now something kind of weird happened where the RPMs didn't really pick back up when we plugged back cylinder number 1. Now the reason is once it sees that there's a coil circuit open, it stops trying to fire that coil until you cycle the key. So we're going to have a little bit of help. Poe, will you turn the key off? Alright, start it back up. Okay. So cylinder number 1, when we disconnected it, it made a big difference on how it ran. So that tells us cylinder number 1 is working. We're going to try that same thing on cylinder number 2. Let's see. Cylinder number 2 didn't make much difference. Alright, let's try cylinder number 3. Okay, huge difference. Running terrible. Plug it back in. You'll notice though it didn't really recover until we reset the key again. Kill it and we'll restart it. So now it smooths out a bit. Now we're going to do that same thing, cylinder number 4. Alright, big difference. Barely running. Plug it back in. Shut the car off again. Okay, so big difference on cylinder 1. No difference on 2. Big difference on 3. Big difference on 4. So I know that cylinder number 2 is not contributing. So we therefore have a pretty good idea that this is the misfiring cylinder, which actually reminds me the code that was set was p0302 for cylinder 2 misfire. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to shut the car off. We're going to go ahead and we're going to unbolt all 4 of the coils, and we're going to pull them one at a time and check for spark with a spark tester. So here that comes. Flat rate style here. We've got a whole lot of time around here. Go ahead. Alright, we're going to go ahead and we're going to check cylinder number 1. Go ahead, Brett. We're going to pull that coil, keep it plugged in, just barely sneak it out, connect it to a spark tester. You could also use a spark plug if you have a spare one. The key is to get it grounded to a nice surface. That's the challenging part with a spark plug. Right. This one will clamp right there nice and easy. Now, Poe, you're going to go ahead and start it up.
Here, start.
Alright, so we're definitely getting a spark on cylinder number 1. So that's good. Alright, shut it off. We're going to go ahead and swap it right over to cylinder number 2. Will it make it? I'm going to sneak it in there. Now this is our suspect cylinder, if you remember. This one was not contributing to our idle. Go ahead and start it. Okay. not sparking. Now we could shut it off. So here's what you got. Reality, this coil's not firing. This isn't testing your spark plugs. Those are still in the hole. This has nothing to do with those. Now we could take them out and look at them, and that could give us some ideas, but right now we know cylinder number 1 sparks, cylinder number 2 doesn't. How could we tell if it's the coils? Can you switch them? How about we switch coil from number 1, move it to number 2. We'll see if it makes it spark. And I think you're expecting it's going to probably work, because coils are typical. 9 out of 10 times it's going to be your problem. But let's see if this fixes it. Go ahead and keep it. Yeah, that's good. We'll keep that one. We'll hook number 1 up so it's going to run. That way this car's probably not really going to want to run on 2 cylinders. We'll get that one running. Alright, so now we have what was the number 1 coil. Now is in the number 2 position, and we're going to see if it fixes it. Go ahead, start it.
Clear.
Will it spark? Still no spark. So now we know that that coil is not the issue. If we really want to confirm it, we can go ahead, shut it off. So this coil was from cylinder number 1. We suspected it might be a bad coil that was in 2, which is now in 1. Tell you what, let's make sure that cylinder number 1 sparks. Keep it in its spot, but hook up the spark tester. Now we can prove for sure that that coil was good, because that coil should spark our spark tester. I'm going to help drop 1 cylinder back in there. All right, go ahead and start it.
Clear.
Okay. So that coil was in 2, but it works in 1. So that means somehow the ECM is not triggering this coil. Poe, go ahead and kill it. So what we need to know, we're going to have to look up some wiring diagrams. This gets a little bit more in depth. That also makes sense why we have that primary ignition code. So from memory, if I remember, 2 of these wires, one is 12 volts, one is ground. One of them is the trigger wire, and that's the one that actually pulses the coil. So we're going to have to do a little bit more advanced stuff, but if that misfire were to follow the coils, we would know that the coil is bad. And 9 times out of 10, that's what you're going to get. But in this case, we got a wire harness problem between here and here. We know. And so that's how you effectively do a spark test to solve your misfire.